Hey, welcome to episode 30 of Tales from the Bridge.
Hello, I'm Marty.
And I'm Sam.
And I'm Kevin.
And I'm Tristan. And in this episode, we're talking about 2312 by Kim Stanley Robinson. Please leave us a review wherever you listen to podcasts. We'd love to hear from you. Well, first off, let's talk about some science fiction, science facts, see what Kevin's got for us. All right, let's make our way over to the bridge.
You guys have heard about this gentleman, Dr. James Green from NASA. I think he was one of their top scientists. He's recently retired, and as his parting gift to NASA, he's going on the offense, saying that we should be thinking about terraforming Mars, and he's talking about what I thought are pretty outlandish things. Have you guys heard about this?
No, I mean I've been on the science fiction Facebook page, Damian Walters, challenging people about terraforming Mars quite a bit recently because we've been talking about that. But I didn't know somebody of distinction was pushing that again.
Well, and because I mean the issue, right, is that Mars not only does it have this thin atmosphere and it's pretty cold, and it doesn't have a magnetic field,
right,
and like Jim Al-Khalili said, there has to be some way to have a magnetic field to be able to keep the atmosphere. And so anyway, this James Green character from NASA, he's quite distinguished. I think he's been there for 30 some years. He says that they need to put a sun shield out in front of Mars, just like in the book that we were reading this week, except it would only filter kind of harmful radiation, but allow solar energy to get through.
I see.
I know, weird.
So it's an artificial magnetic magnetosphere so it would keep the radiation from and coronal mass ejections from stripping the atmosphere off.
That's it, exactly. And so with that, it would, because the atmosphere is like 95% carbon dioxide, you'd start to get greenhouse gas effects. You'd start to get a warming of the planet, and it can maintain its atmosphere. The atmosphere won't keep shooting off into space.
Wow, that's really interesting. Yeah, I guess you could also tune the wavelengths of light that get through while you're doing that, right? And you could I guess all wavelengths are good. But anyway, I could imagine that might be another element that you could then control, right? Like whether you let in the blues or the reds or the infrared, presumably, you want as much infrared as you can to heat the place.
Mm-hmm.
Neat.
It does seem a little bit kind of cart before the horsey, right? For us to be able to build the sun shield to completely obscure all of Mars, I got to imagine that's a bit beyond our capabilities in the near term, right? I figure we've got other things to deal with before that. Like getting to Mars as a human.
Yeah. Well, but again, I think these are important things to discuss because the whole Mars project does seem like a cart before the horse thing, right? But why bother going there if there's no long-term, achievable goal?
Yeah.
I guess, maybe that's always the way we've done it. Maybe, explorers and pioneers go to new lands for the sake of going to new lands, and then the purpose and all of that follows. And I used to really subscribe to that. Maybe I still do. What can we actually get out of terraforming a planet or living on another planet? Is it just real estate? Is that really what it all comes down to? Do we just need more land?
Yeah,
that's what I don't get.
Resources and land. I mean, that's really it.
Seems like it might be easier to colonize our oceans first then, there's still a lot of surface area on this planet and in the air. If we're going to colonize Venus, say in the 50 kilometers above the surface where the pressure is the same, we were talking about that with Carl Schrader. But then you start to wonder well, if we're going to do that on Venus, why don't we just do that here? We can make sky cities here first before we try to make them on Venus.
Here we are here on Earth. It's the place that we evolved. It's the one place that we can live. And that's true. But then also, there's also, as you're saying, this aspirational element. Let's build a strategy and let's try to work towards it over time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I like the idea of learning how to live in space and building habitats and doing that sort of thing. But do you need to go that much further than the moon to get started, right? We're shooting for Mars, but should we shoot, is there not a lot of testing and things that we could figure out in our, is that not a more achievable goal? I mean, I know that terraforming the moon probably is not an achievable goal, but I mean, even if you're terraforming Mars, you're probably living in a bubble, right, for some time before you get there, right? Like, so you're living in a completely, artificial environment that you have to create, and that we have to create in order to build anything from there. So I feel like the moon kind of is the starting point from that, and then you kind of work your way outwards. And it's nice to go, well, Mars, like but it's 2 years out, right? Like you got to just to get there, right? There's this whole like the distance thing and everything like that. Anyway, so I just sort of feel like I'd be looking at the moon and to get through these things, and then look at what are the resources that it takes to get out there, and is there the possibility for us to bring resources back that saves, that sort of ships our more destructive resource, extraction techniques here on Earth somewhere else where it does less harm, right? Like, I don't know. So I'm with you on this, where I kind of flip-flop back and forth. I kind of want to see something for the effort.
I like the idea of the moon. Like, if there was a station on the moon that I could go visit, that's appealing. Going to Mars, not so much. But also, there should be a distinction between exploration and then terraforming. I think they're obviously we explore before we terraform, but like you said, why terraform? Is it real estate? Do we need more land? Not really. So I don't get the whole terraforming thing unless I'm missing something. But exploration, yeah, let's go as far as we can. Let's get robots on Mars studying the soil. Let's go further. Let's go to the Kuiper Belt. Let's get out as far as we possibly can to explore. To go there to live, I don't know why that's. I mean, if humans go out there to do experiments in 100 years, 200 years from now, sure, but in terms of the terraforming or making a place to live, I don't see that as that. I'm probably missing something, because if people are saying we got to terraform Mars, there's probably a good reason for that. But really, I only see space exploration as the only reason to really leave Earth, to learn about the cosmos.
Mm-hmm. In which case, there's really no reason to send people. And I think that has been the conscious strategy at NASA and a lot of space agencies. They've realized, like, if it's for exploration and scientific, scientific studies, robots can do all that, man. Like, there's really no reason to send people unless you want to send people to make a colony. And if you're going to send people to make a colony, it better be a sustainable colony with a future. And in that case, then there's all these problems that we got to solve. And I'm totally with you, Sam. I think, why not do the moon first? Why even bother thinking about Mars? Like, I'm not sure there's any particular benefit of Mars over the moon in any respect at all. The moon's slightly smaller, I guess. I think the gravity is 1/6 of Earth's, and I think it's 1/3 maybe on Mars. So, okay, a little bit more gravity, but neither of those have atmospheres. I don't think there's any particular, like, reason to, like, think that there's mineral resources or something, gold or something on Mars. I think that's true, that we know there isn't anything of particular value in the rock of the moon. Although I've often wondered that the moon did come from Earth, right? It came from, like, ancient times. We got hit by a giant comet or something, and the moon is made of the same stuff as the Earth. And so actually, in terms of mineral mining and stuff, you'd think that, oh, well, maybe all the stuff that we use from digging out of the Earth is probably also present in the moon, and yet you never really hear about that. So maybe a listener out there knows more than I do about mining exploitation of the moon, but it sure looks like a different landscape, and it's made of just this regolith, right, which seems to be very homogeneous and uniform.
But it's a great outpost, right? Like, if we are going to get to Saturn, to Jupiter, we're going to need a further out place to land, and to, have humans to make new machines to get out there, if that's really what it comes down to. So I see it as a further outpost, because obviously the moon is really not much of an outpost, or it is for some reasons, but not for the outer source.
Yeah, we can see. Yeah, I can see it like as like a lunar shipyard, right? Something like that. That would, to me, seem pretty useful, because so long as it's a human mission, as long as there's humans on any mission that leaves Earth, you've got an umbilical cord to Earth that you can't cut. You send a robot out, you don't really need to worry. You send and forget, right? And you just hope it lands well. You hope the parachute works or the bouncy thing works or whatever. But as soon as you put a person in there, now you've got life support to worry about. You got food, and you got to put all that infrastructure in there, and that's really expensive to send out. And you've got to bring them back, right? Or have a way to supply them, right? So that's.
Did you guys ever watch Ad Astra?
Yeah, I did. It's the one with Brad Pitt, right?
Yeah, he goes to seek his father, who's not well, and he's the furthest human away from Earth, who was a scientist doing experiments. I think Uranus, I believe. I could be wrong there. But the first time I saw it, I thought, well, that was mediocre, very slow. And then I watched it again, and actually watched it again after that. It's really, really good if you let it settle. But it's a very slow movie. But it's the first film that I can think of that really visually gave you that whole, like, there's life on Earth. It functions in the future somewhat the same as it does now. But if you want to go deeper into space, you're definitely landing on the moon before you go anywhere. And then when you get to the moon, you're definitely going to another station before you go anywhere, just outside of, and you're actually probably going to land on Mars before you go anywhere. And you wait until the orbit's lined to go further. So he just keeps on going further and stopping along the way. And it's a very slow paced movie, fantastic soundtrack. The score is one of the best I've heard in years. So that's good, but it's slow, but it's a neat movie that you really feel the emptiness of space and the loneliness of space. It really captures that well. It's I like I said, thought it was mediocre the first time I saw it, and then one day just thought, check that out again, and I think I've watched it 2 more times. So highly recommend that. But I just brought that up because it has that Earth to the moon, moon to Mars, Mars to another space station, and then out.
Yeah. Well, it reminds me also of Carl Schrader's Cyclers, right? And the conversations we've had about that. And the more I think about that, the more that seems like an important element, at least, of any spacefaring civilization. That, we don't need. Well, we probably need the space station we have going around the Earth, obviously, as a test. But imagine if we made a space station that had the same orbit around the sun as the Earth, but going in the other direction, right? So now you have something when you cross, you can hop from one to the other at very low energy, and it'll take you over, on a different timetable to line up with different planets in a different schedule than the Earth. And then you can imagine sort of putting these stations, that orbit the sun, right, but at different distances away. So you just sort of have to hop, like you just said, Tristan, right, from one to the next on a schedule, and that's how you get across the solar system. But you got to take the time to sort of, zip around the Earth. And anyway, that's kind of a neat concept. I think that we should be adding planets, tiny little planets, to our solar system, right, as part of the transportation network. All right, well, let's talk about the book.
All right. So the book this month was 2312 by Kim Stanley Robinson. And I think the best way to describe this is an epic hard sci-fi book. Because it's epic, because it's seemingly quite long, although it's not actually that long. It's 576 pages, which is a long book, but it's not enormously long. But I do know that to some people in this group, it seemed quite long. But this was I loved this book. The first time I read it, I read it, and I remember thinking to myself, "Wow, this is what sci-fi is all about, right?" Because this is a plausible. Everything is kind of plausible in near-term technology. There's no fast light travel. It's about human colonizing the solar system, and it's there are leaps of technology, of course, but they're not leaps of technologies that we couldn't imagine happening in the fairly near future. So, what would be the logical ways of going around and doing mass travel between here and Mars, between here and Venus, between Venus and the asteroid belt, and he talks about coring out asteroids and setting them on fast trajectories that are basically like large traveling planets that you could get into, and so he basically took all these different ideas and shoved it into one book. And of course, it is a bit of a kaleidoscope of ideas, and it is a bit of a kaleidoscope of narratives, and it does not read like a lot of other kind of more fantasy-based sci-fi, but it is nothing but ideas. And of course, it resonated with a lot of people because it won the Nebula Award in 2012. It was nominated for Arthur C. Clarke Award and The Locust and Hugo for Best Novel, but it only won the Nebula. But it really is. It was a bit of a slog for me. I also have to agree. I believe the first time I read it, I skipped a lot, and in particular, I realized that I skipped, I think, a lot of the extracts that were between chapters, the lists and places in the quantum walks from the quantum computer humanoids. But this time I listened to it, so it was harder for me to skip. So I had to listen to it all. And anyway, so I was thinking of you guys and thinking that you might not all like it, but I loved it. I thought it was great, and because I'm an idea guy and I love sci-fi for the ideas. So I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on it.
I got your back, Kevin. Don't worry, we'll get them.
I don't know, Sam. You want to be up, or should I just jump in here?
Ever wondered what it takes to make it in the movie business? Peel back the curtain with 4-6 Success Filmmaking. 4-6 Success Filmmaking is where filmmakers share their stories and the secrets.
It's beyond competitive out there.
There have been movies that it's taken me 10 years to get made.
Don't wait to create. Like, you've got to just keep making stuff.
Tune in to 4-6 Success Filmmaking for your dose of cinematic realness, direct from the voices that have lived it.
No, that's all right. I'll kick this door open.
Go for it. Yeah.
All right. Yeah. This book is a road trip across a beautifully built vision of our solar system in the nearish future. But unfortunately, the story and the characters who act as the vehicle for this in-depth world weren't given the same time and care as as all these like wonderful places that he builds and imagines. And the result is a fascinating vision of our future told in perhaps the most boring manner possible. I mean, the characters all speak in the same voice, and I just couldn't engage with it. And some of there's these asides and excerpts that Kevin, you just alluded to, that some of them serve the story, but some of them do very little to drive the narrative or contribute to the world building, which made me feel like I was reading his post-it note ideas that he couldn't find a place for, but couldn't let go of either. So at one point, we were literally stuck in a tunnel on Mercury for a month with his protagonist, just for the purpose of airing out some things that he found interesting, but none of this really did anything for the story. So it took me out of the story, it took me out of that world, and it kind of contributed this sort of plodding pace. But at other times, these excerpts do a wonderful job of serving as world building, which is where he shines. The terraria building and the historiography excerpts that he builds into the story are fascinating, and they really serve their purpose to drive the narrative. And the colonies he describes are incredibly detailed and described beautifully, and they are the real characters here at the end of it, right? And this is where his writing starts to shine, Saturn in particular. But I think he just needs a good editor that he's willing to listen to, or a co-writer who will write the story side. And if you could kind of narrow the focus, tighten up the pacing, and bring some personality to his characters to properly serve the world that he's built, this would have been wildly successful for me. I think too, understand KSM is to understand he's a futurist first and maybe a sci-fi author second. And I think he describes things that he does well too, is he describes quite believably what Earth will look like if we don't sort of clean up our act. And in his historiography excerpt, he describes the current time that we're living in as the Great Dithering, which is a perfect description for the time that we're living in.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, because ultimately, Kim Stanley Robinson is the oracle of our doom, and he's worth reading for that purpose alone. And how he approaches the myth of space colonization and the means of realistically living in space is equally sobering, and I think a reminder that a healthy Earth is essential to any success in space. So for me, it's high sci-fi, but it's totally unforgiving. And I'll come back to Kim Stanley Robinson, but maybe not in a hurry, and only when I'm in a mindset where I'm ready to go to school. Like I'm ready to pick up a textbook to read for my time off. So that's sort of my take on this book.
Wow, that was a really good review. Nice.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, for a book that you hated. Well,
yeah.
Well, I will. I mean, I'll let Tristan smooth things over after both of us have had our say then. So I'll jump in. And I got to say, I agree with you, Sam. I mean, I found it a slog. I hated the characters. I just it was really difficult I mean, Warham was kind of okay, but kind of he just made me cringe all the time. And Swan was just distinctly unlikable. And it was just a lot of, I feel like you're right. He had a great idea for world building in a book, and then he was like, well, but to write a book, you're supposed to have a story and a characters or two, so we'll just sort of use them as a vehicle to deliver the world building, but the vehicle was very plotting. Now, having said that, I'm not surprised that Kevin and Tristan, you guys like this book, because I realized after the fact, not while I was reading it, but afterwards, it was a lot like Ian M. Banks for me. It was like the hard sci-fi version of Ian M. Banks in that it was rambling, pointless, without any direction or conclusion or meaning, and just kind of I get what he's doing, but the thing I've realized I really don't like is when I feel like an author is wasting my time. And again, you're right? I think you could really use an editor. There was just a lot of stuff that didn't belong in this book. We really could have done without it, and it would have made it a more enjoyable experience for me if I felt like I was in the hands of a better pilot. Let's put it that way, right? That sort of knew where he was going. Now, having said all that, I knew that this was what I was probably going to get. I was not surprised at this because I've read his Mars trilogy. And I know that he's big on world building and not so great on the character and story and plot. And so that's okay. I was willing to forgive it for the first 400 pages. But by the time we got past 600, I was a little annoyed. I was like, okay, there better be a good twist at the end here, man. And there wasn't, right? It was just, but on the other hand, on the cover of the book, it says, literally, the review is a masterful moving vision. And it is. It's a masterful vision. It's a great book as a painting. If this was a painting that I could look at and be like, yeah, look at this sort of vision that I'm looking at. That part was really quite beautifully executed. But as a novel that you have to read from beginning to end, as a story, it just, it lost me on a number of times. But Tristan's brought me around a few times. We talked about this yesterday. I mean, I think Tristan and probably Kevin, you guys are catching some more of the symbolism maybe that I was missing. I wasn't, we should talk about that, Tristan, yeah. But here, I want to end my little brief blurb with a little excerpt. So I've said some not happy things about this book, but I think this is a good demonstration of what this book, of the strengths of this book. So I'm going to give it the benefit of the doubt in that respect. Through gaps in the cloud layer, she could see the light but dark blue of the Terran sky, subtle and full. It looked like a blue dome flattened at the center, perhaps a few kilometers above the clouds. She reached up for it, although knowing, too, that it was just a kind of rainbow made it glorious. A rainbow that was blue everywhere and covered everything. The blue itself was complex, narrow in range, but infinite within that range. It was an intoxicating sight, and you could breathe it. One was always breathing it. You had to. The wind shoved it into you. Breathe and get drunk. Oh my, to be free of all restraint, minimally clothed, lying on the bare surface of a planet, sucking in its atmosphere as if it were an aqua vitae, feeling in your chest how it kept you alive. No Terran she had ever met properly appreciated their air or saw their sky for what it was. In fact, they seldom looked at it. So that's an excerpt of Swan, the main character, visiting planet Earth. She's from Mercury, and the book starts on Mercury, which I've never read any other book based on Mercury, and I thought that was all really fascinating. So that's its strength. I mean, I think that was a beautiful description. I mean, that's exactly the kind of world building he's great at. So if that's what you're up for, this is the book for you.
Well, I have to say that I agree with you guys, Sam and Marty, completely. Like I see exactly where you're coming from, but I guess my enjoyment level was just a bit more increased than your frustrations with lack of plot and character. I kind of like I've owned this book for a year and just never picked it up, even though I don't know if I would have planned on picking it up anytime soon, to be honest, if Kevin hadn't recommended us to read it. But right from the start, I enjoyed it because his writing, and that's something about Kim Stanley Robinson, is his prose is excellent. What you read, Marty, is fantastic. Like, it's just he's very, very good. But again, I'll agree with you. The story it's not a page turner. Kevin, you said it was a page turner, and for me, I turned every single page. I read every page in that book, but it was not like a mystery that was unfolding. It almost seemed like there was going to be a mystery, and there was, but it didn't. It almost didn't even resolve that well. Like when they found out where the attack came from, it was very quick, and then the way they resolved it wasn't that complex either. The thing about this book, though, is it's heavy in symbolism. I'm a fan of classical music. I love his reference to classical music, and I felt like this book was like a symphony that way. That if you're listening to a 20-minute piece, you shouldn't be listening, and this isn't, and I'm going a bit hippie here, but Alan Watts said that you don't dance to get to the end of the song. You dance for the sake of it. And I find this is one of those books that I enjoyed reading every single page because I enjoyed the pages. I wasn't needing to turn the pages. I was enjoying the page I was on. I didn't need to get to the end. There were times when I was like, okay, so we've read some much more action filled or fun books, but that didn't hurt the book for me. It also felt like I was learning. Sam, you referred to it as, if you want to read a textbook, maybe you'll pick up another Kim Stanley Robinson. That's how I kind of felt about this book. When I read it, I was learning. And Kim Stanley Robinson has done a lot of research for me to understand things. So I have a lot of gratitude for that, because he spoon-fed me a lot of stuff that I wouldn't know had I not read this book, because I didn't go and look at, okay, so let's look at what it would take to terraform a planet and how to terraform different planets in different ways because of the way those planets orbit or spin or their size, that kind of stuff. And I definitely learned a lot. And I just like a lot of the symbolism too, with just the fact that they were the longest chapter, I believe, from my recollection, was Swan and Warham stuck in the tunnels, which I can see is excruciating for someone who didn't like the book, because you're like, get out of the fucking tunnels, guys. Or Kim, get them out of the tunnels, man. That was done on purpose, I would say, because you're supposed to feel exhausted. You're supposed to feel like you have radiation and you're dying, because you're just like, this chapter is going on longer and longer and longer, when all the other chapters were actually quite short up until then. So it was good effect. And then just to look at that being the two of them beginning their relationship, and then think about the next time that the two of them are alone, they're in the exact opposite situation, where you're in a tunnel, you're close to the core of a planet, you're surrounded by matter, dense matter in this tunnel, claustrophobic, and then later on they're floating in space together, and that's where they're going to die next, which is the exact opposite. There's no matter around them at all. They're in the vacuum of space, and the contrast there is perfect symbolism for their relationship, I would say. And those little things for me will help me really appreciate the entire book. And then just to go back to the classical music, I loved how that was symbolism throughout the whole book as well. And I mean, there's a lot I could say. I feel like I remember this book more than a lot. Like when I finish a Stevenson book, I don't remember that much. And you compared it to Ian M. Banks, or at least how you felt about Ian M. Banks. I find I can kind of see that, but I find Ian M. Banks to be way funnier and way more fun, and just overall hilarious, fun, and smart. And I mean, he's one of my favorites.
So this is a dry, boring version of Ian M. Banks, which for me really doesn't work.
Yeah. But for me, it's somewhat forgivable. But at the same time, I don't learn from Ian M. Banks books in the same way, because I'm obviously not learning much about the solar system.
Yeah, I agree. This one is really memorable, right? Like, and it occurred to me also that he was working really hard. Kim Stanley Robinson was working really hard to make a particular point, which is there is a way out for humanity, and we can save ourselves. And in this case, it was almost like the children saving the parents, right? The diaspora, the folks who have gone out to colonize the solar system, have, benevolently gone in and tried to reanimate the Earth with wildlife that they've been saving up in terraria that have been floating around the solar system, unbeknownst to the Earthlings, and not even necessarily with their approval, in fact with their disapproval, they're trying to make the Earth a better place, and so it's very paternalistic, and it's very much saying, here are the enlightened people, and here are the people who are stuck in kind of a class and system. But to get there, he had to paint this massive world, as you say, Tristan, with a huge amount of research. Like, think about all of the places where people live that he described. The asteroid belt, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter. How could people live in every single one of these locations? He would have had to go speak to subject matter experts, come up with plausible ideas. Like you said, Marty, nobody can live on Mercury unless you've got a city that rotates in the dark side of Mercury. It's the only way that it could work. And he came up with a plausible way of making that happen. Not super believable, but plausible. And so I agree with Tristan that it was that thinking that made me turning the pages. And I do like Sam when he said that he's the oracle of our doom, and that is the way he typically writes. But he was trying to be not utopian here, but talking about a possible way where we could survive. We maybe we get above the planet, we figure out a way to help humanity through solar exploration.
Yeah. Well, Kim Stanley Robinson, one of his talents, certainly, I mean, what I think he's famous for, originally in the Mars trilogy, Red Mars, Green Mars, and Blue Mars, right? He is very intelligent politically. And I do appreciate that, right? Like his commentary on human politics, environmentalism, stagnation, gridlock, all these things, it is very intelligent. And I did enjoy that. And I think, what he said about Earth, what you touched on there, Kevin, is very prescient, interesting. I don't know that, I think what he describes is Earth is just so packed and so crowded and stays so overpopulated for so long that nothing can ever get done, right? It's this politically gridlocked system where nobody can take any action because somebody else is going to object always. And so it just stays in this sort of quagmire of never being able to solve its problems, never being able to reanimate its lost wildlife, or lower the human population, or the intensity of our resource use. And you're right, it is the children saving the parents in this case, right, where it takes the diaspora to come back and be like, screw it, I'm just going to do it, right? Like, I'm not asking permission. We're just going to drop all these, animals and stuff on the earth, and we're just going to like disrupt what's going on. And that was quite beautiful, I thought, and quite insightful, right? As a sad way that humanity could kind of find itself waning, I guess, in the future into its doom, if we don't find ways to just like make choices and do big things again. If we're all just, it's like the failure of civilization by committee, right? Like there's just everything's a committee everywhere all the time, and nothing can ever get done anymore.
It was about time we read a hard sci-fi book like this anyway, right? We've been going on a few adventures lately, so it's good timing too. So I think I was ripe for that timing too, to get something that was much more heady and textbooky.
And it speaks to why a lot of people like sci-fi, right? Like it was nominated for a lot of awards and did win. I'm surprised it won the Nebula, actually, because typically this sort of thing would be more Hugo style. But it does speak to a lot of science fiction readers too. It's a different kind of story.
Well, should we find out what we are reading next?
Yeah.
Sure.
Tristan, you're up.
I am up, and I figured we would cut the reading time in half of 2312 and get down to 300 pages for a book. But we're going to read Semiosis by Sue Burke. And I am about a third through this already, and I love it. But the only reason I think I really know about this book is because we've spoken to a couple authors who have mentioned it as books that they have appreciated lately. I think David Brin said that he really appreciated this book, and so did Adrian Tchaikovsky.
Yeah,
and he's got a little bit of a review on the book as well. And so does Mira Grant has a little review, which is Shauna McGuire, whom we've also spoken to. This book consists of many stories that are generational, and we just seem to, from what I can tell, like I said, I'm a third into the book. Every story takes you to the next generation and we find out more about the world that we've landed on, the planet Pax that we've landed on. And life is not as it seems, and it's cool. It's very different. It's a debut novel by Sue Burke, whom has written 3 novels now, I believe. There's a sequel to Semiosis called Interference. And then the third book, I can't think offhand what it's called, but we're actually going to have Sue on the show soon. So we'll definitely be talking to her about her books, because I'm sure we can read those books and talk to Sue about them. But that's all she's written, and I think she's off to a really good start if she's going to be writing some sci-fi novels now. And I've got a lot of questions for her, and I hope you guys enjoyed this book. I think Marty's already read it, and he didn't like it because he doesn't like any book. So
I liked it.
I'm just kidding. But,
okay. So I did read this book a while ago. I found it when I was reading Adrian Tchaikovsky's Children of Time and Children of Ruin. I loved those books, and yeah, that's why we talked to him about that. And I was looking for more in that kind of biological sci-fi genre. So when I was just looking at lists and people recommending things that are like Children of Time, this book came up consistently. So I just ordered it and I read it, and I did. I liked it a lot. We'll have lots more to say about it. And I'm looking forward to reading the sequel while you guys read the first one, so that I can bring that to the table next time. But it's very biological sci-fi, right? It's very much speaking about the alien form of intelligence. And in this case, I'll just give it away. It's plant intelligence, which is great. I've never seen that anywhere else. And I think it's a super interesting and unique form of alien intelligence to tackle.
Oh, I'm
Yeah, I'd call
excited. I'm excited. This is an award nominee too, right? It's been nominated for several awards, and as a debut novel, I mean that's always a good sign for an author.
Yeah. Cool.
Right on.
Sounds great. All right.
So like usually when we do trivia, I got made up points. I figured I'd raise the stakes. My wife was on Facebook Marketplace, and for $12, she was able to score this amazing Death Star toaster, and that will be the
Death Star
prize to the
toaster.
winner.
Whoa.
Of today's trivia.
No.
Yes.
No. Wow. Okay.
I am
Special
gonna win
occasion.
this trivia. Come heck or
Yeah.
high water, I'm winning that toaster.
And if I can't really see this on camera, and the listeners, just so you know, we're on Zoom, so we can kind of see each other. It will toast in a TIE fighter.
What?
Whoa.
No way.
Yes. So
It actually burns in
why-
an image of a TIE fighter on the side of your toast.
Yeah.
That is
Wow.
brilliant.
And
All
why don't
right.
you want to keep this for yourself?
Well, it was made in North Korea. Is known to explode, but
Oh.
you guys
Oh.
allowed. No, I just thought. Yeah, I thought it would be. Belle found it today, and she's like, "Should I get this?" I was like, "Do it," and I got just the place for it. So yeah, I think it'll be. I think I'd love to see one of you guys enjoy this, and I will deliver it to your door. But first, you must answer these 5 questions. These are
Okay.
Star Wars questions. We got a warm up. This is going to have to be first come, first serve,
Mhm.
and
Alright.
and we'll have to. I'll try to keep track of who comes first. And
I'm gonna be cutthroat here, guys. I
it.
am not. I'm not leaving any room here.
Me too.
Well,
The
you have an
elbows are coming
awesome
out.
like sci-fi man cave that needs this Star Wars toaster for sure.
I'll be making toast up here at my office. No, I doubt that. It'll still.
TIE fighter toasted that.
That's right.
All right. Question number 1. What is the name of Yoda's home?
Dagobah.
Yes.
Dang.
I knew that.
All right. Who is Luke and Leia's mother?
Padme.
Whoa.
Guys, I'm sorry. I
It's
really want
alright,
that
it's
to
alright.
Another game. All
Just
right.
take
All
this
right.
home.
Straight out of the gate on these, yeah.
What is the substance that powered the Death Star laser?
Hmm.
Oh.
Oh.
It's not dilithium crystals.
No.
Not
That's Star
dilithium.
Trek.
No, is it the same crystal that like a lightsaber is made from? Oh, I can't
Yes.
forget what those are called. I don't know.
From
I
the
don't know.
planet Ilum.
Yeah, I'm not gonna get it.
I don't know what.
I don't know it either.
Okay. It's Kyber crystals.
Kyber.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like the
Okay.
Kyber Path.
Yeah. And okay, in Return of the Jedi, what planet is the second Death Star orbiting?
Endor.
Oh, yes.
Yep.
Dang.
I think
Endor.
you just crossed the threshold
And
there,
you just
Tristan.
crossed the
You got
threshold, Tristan.
Mm.
All right, so
I'm sorry, guys.
final
it. Toaster
question
is yours.
bonus question, and we'll see if our new toaster owner, Tristan, gets it. Who was the scientist responsible for implementing the exhaust port design flaw that gave the rebels a fighting chance at the Battle of Yavin?
Many
Wow, dude.
Bothans lost their life to give us this information. I can't think of the name though.
No, this was a little in depth. You would have met this character in Rogue One.
Oh.
Oh right, yeah.
Is it the woman with the big glasses? Okay.
No,
No.
no, this
don't
is
know.
Galen Erso.
Oh.
It was his daughter who is the rebel who
Right.
dies. Yeah.
Right.
Oh, okay. Solid
All right,
questions.
Tristan, you win a Death Star toaster.
Wow.
Congratulations.
And deservedly so, Tristan.
Yes.
You do deserve that.
Yeah. You're the start.
appreciate
Now, next
that.
time, get us a Matrix toaster, and I'll win that one. All right.
Tristan,
like
I
these-
will hand deliver this your prize to you this week. I'll send you a text when I'm in the neighborhood running errands. All right.
Oh, that's exciting. Thank you.
Yeah.
That's,
Yeah.
I like these
cool.
steaks. Mhm.
Yeah, the steaks made it a little more fun. Maybe next time I'll grab a little something, and that'll be the prize. We can just rotate that around.
Oh.
Cool.
It's just a lucky find on Facebook Marketplace. So.
All right, Semiosis by Sue Burke. Read along with us. It's a fantastic book. We hope you enjoy it. Next week, we've got Damien Walters on the show from the Science Fiction Podcast. He's a lot of fun to hang out with. And we've got more author interviews coming up, so every Wednesday episodes. Join us. Leave a review where you listen to podcasts. We would love to hear from you. Thank you for joining us. Until next time.